This channel is about helping new and new-ish screenwriters just kind of find their way, answer questions that you have, talk about the craft. But wow, can people give some really bad advice? I mean, I've seen some doozies. And so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna share with you some of these bad advice things that I've seen, and we're gonna pull apart why they're bad. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking if you find value. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't done that. Click the bell if you want to be notified. There's links below. Be sure to check all those out. Let's jump in. There is a lot of advice out there. Unfortunately, some of it is bad. So we're going to look at 6 pieces of bad advice. And then at the end, I'm going to give you 1 piece of good advice. So stick around for that. Bad advice number 1. You must create likable characters, especially your main character. Your main character has to be likable. We've got to like your main character. Okay, well, this is just not true. Now, yes, depending on the type of story you're writing, you probably want your character to be likable, at least in some way. But you don't have to have a likable protagonist. That's not a requirement. Here's the requirement. The audience has to care about what will happen to your protagonist. So maybe you've got a protagonist that's just a really bad dude. I mean, just kind of evil, and we simply want to see that person get what's coming to them. Okay, I care about what's going to happen to them. Now I'm going to watch. I don't have to like them, but I care about what's going to happen. I want to see them get what they deserve. Okay, so you don't have to have a likable protagonist. You do have to have a protagonist, and you have to have something in your storytelling that helps us, the audience, care about what's going to happen to your protagonist. As long as we care, we're going to be along for the ride. So we don't have to like them. So anybody telling you all your characters have to be likable, not true, not true. But we do have to care about what's going to happen to them. Bad advice number 2. Don't worry about story structure. Story maps, story circles, story journey, like whatever you're using, like they're all bad. That's the bad advice. Here's the problem. A story is still a story, and a story has to be a story. So you can tell a story, and for that story to be a story, it's got to do story things. Okay, just like if you look at a chair is a chair is a chair, a car is a car is a car. Those things have elements. Now you can have different types of chairs, different models of cars, of course you can. Just like you can tell different types of stories, but the story itself is still a story. It still needs things, right? A story is about someone who wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. I've got to have those pieces, and if I don't have those pieces, I don't have a story. It doesn't matter how I tell it or what color of paint I put on it. It doesn't matter. It's not a story. So I still have to tell a good story. This is where structure maps can help. Structure is necessary, it's important, it's required. You kind of got to have it in the creation of the story. But when you choose to tell that story in a screenplay format, well, now you can do some things a little different. I don't need to follow all those little formatty things. So yes, the format stuff can be really helpful. So when you hear people telling you, oh, ignore story format, just write a story, or ignore story structure, just write a story, like they don't know what they're talking about, because you still need a functional story. You want to make sure you have a character that gets from beginning to end. And if you don't have that, it doesn't matter how you tell it. Story structure and story maps, those things can be really helpful, especially when you're starting out. Just don't get tied into, ooh, this has to happen on this page, this has to happen on this page. Storytelling, those are 2 different things. So don't mix them up. Story structure, all that stuff, it's really helpful. If anybody tells you it's not, or you can ignore it, you should stop listening to them right then. Bad advice number 3. Just sit down and write. You don't need to know what happens. You don't need to know the end. You don't need to know all the stuff that happens. Okay, that is a recipe for disaster and causes incredible frustration, especially in new writers. You want to know the end. Someone who wants something badly, they're having trouble getting it, and they get it or they don't. That's the end. Do they get it? Yes or no? You got to know that. And you got to kind of know those pieces before you start writing. So when you hear people say, just sit down and write, just, kind of figure it out. Do writers do that? Yes. but they've kind of been doing it for a while. So they inherently know story elements and story pieces they need to include. When you're starting out, you don't inherently know all those things. You need to plan it out. You need to figure it out. Take the time, do the work. Screenwriting is a long game. Okay, it's not overnight success. It's not like you just write a screenplay, you send it in to somebody, they send you a check with a bunch of zeros on it. Like, it's not an ATM. That's not how it works. Okay, you have to do the work. And doing the work means that you sit down at the beginning, you kind of figure out the basics of your story. Now, do you have to know all the little details? No. The little details you can figure out as you go, but you do kind of need to know the main signposts. You need to know the big markers along the way, and you definitely need to know how your story is going to end before you sit down and start writing. Now, can you do it the other way? Yes, but it's going to be frustrating to you. I'm sorry, it's just going to be. You're going to be frustrated, and you're going to kind of throw in the towel. So don't do that. I don't want you to be frustrated. Think through it, plan it out, then write it. It will go much better for you, I promise. Bad advice number 4. Don't worry about the format. Just don't worry about all those rules. Just write your story. Okay, this can be a problem because formatting a screenplay is part of the storytelling. Okay, so you figured out your story. Now you got to tell the story. And part of telling the story as a screenplay is the format. The format helps you tell the story. It can also hinder you from telling the story. So if you're not following format, well, that can kind of be a problem. Bad advice number 5, though, is the flip side of this. So someone that says something like, if it's not properly formatted in every piece of your screenplay, then no one's going to read it. Okay, well, that's not true either. So there are formatting things that you need to follow. There are formatting things that you can kind of bend. Some you can break, right? As long as I'm showing that it's a screenplay and I'm using the format to help me tell the story, that's a good thing. So anyone that's on either side of this one, ignore all the format or it's got to be perfect, be sure you're following all the rules, both of those are bad. It's somewhere, the reality is somewhere in the middle. So you want to kind of land somewhere in the middle. Yes, you need to follow the format, especially where you're able to. If it's something a little weird, it's going to be okay. Just be clear. Be consistent with how you're formatting things. It's going to end up being fine. Nobody's going to chuck your script across the room because you forgot to capitalize something or because something is not all left aligned or whatever like it's supposed to be. It's generally is going to be okay. Yes, you still need a good story, right? I still got to have a story beginning to end, but you want to use the format to help you tell the story. So bad advice 4 and 5 is, all the extremes. Just, ignore the format or follow it, to the T. You don't have to do either of those. Land somewhere in the middle. You're going to be fine. Bad advice number 6. Anyone can sell a screenplay. That's not really true. Most screenplays that float around that people are trying to get bought are bad. They're just bad. I don't know how else to say it. They're just bad. The story doesn't work. It's poorly formatted, egregiously formatted. They're not using it to the advantage to tell the story. They're just not paying attention to story and storytelling elements or all the other pieces that you kind of got to think about when you're writing a screenplay, and they're just bad. Writing a screenplay, and I kind of alluded to this, it's not a magic ATM. It's not oh, I've got this idea for a movie. I'm just going to write it and I'll sell it and I'll go, buy an island in the Caribbean. It doesn't work that way. Yes, you occasionally hear about somebody selling their very first script they wrote, okay? Occasionally. But the reason you hear about it is because it's so rare. It doesn't happen all that much. Honestly, hardly at all. For most people, it takes about 10 years, right? From when you decide, I'm going to start writing a screenplay to where you can get your screenplays up to the level that they can kind of get sold. And that doesn't mean it's going to get sold. You can have a really good screenplay that doesn't sell. There's lots of factors involved. And you have to understand this is a long game. So anybody telling you, hey, anybody can write a screenplay, it's not true. You've got to work at it. You've got to have the discipline. You've got to have the devotion. You've got to study the craft. You've got to learn the craft. You've got to be a fan of film. You got to be a fan of TV. I mean, the worst thing I've heard when people say, if I'm asking somebody oh, you want to be a writer, huh? Okay, so what do you watch? Oh, I don't watch film. What do you mean you don't watch film? How can you not watch film if you want to write film? That's dumb. Okay, so not anybody can do this. At the same time, can anybody do it? Yeah. But you got to be disciplined, you got to be devoted, you got to want to learn, you've got to love it. Okay, it's a long game. It's not a get rich quick thing. You want to spend time doing it. You want to take your time and learn, and then you can succeed. So yes, it's a long game. There are faster ways to get there. So you I don't want to take 10 years. I want to get there a little faster. Well, there's faster ways to get there. You can read books, you can take classes, you can participate in online writing groups. There's lots of things you can do to kind of move forward. There's one thing that I've got in the links below. It's the class that I wish I would have had when I was starting out screenwriting. It just kind of lays out all the basics, talks about character arcs, characters, building characters, story structure, format, all that kind of stuff, dialogue, scenes, what scenes are. It's a really, really helpful class. It's in the link below. If that's of interest to you and you want to kind of shorten that 10-year span, you probably want to check out the Screenwriting Fast Track. That's linked below. Okay, I promised you a piece of good advice at the end of all these bad advices. So if you've seen these bad advices, don't listen to them. But do listen to this one. Invest your time in learning the craft. You want to learn the craft. Watch things, read screenplays, read books, watch videos like this. Do things to help you learn the craft. And the craft is not just writing, it's part of your life. You have to integrate it into your life. You've got to take time out of your day to write. You've got to take time out of your day to invest. It is an investment. Okay, so think of it like that. I'm going to invest in learning the craft, and so that down the road, it's going to pay me some dividends and pay off for me because of the work that I'm doing now. And you kind of have to have this long-term view. One of my pieces of best advice is think about screenwriting as a long-term game. You might get there really fast, and there are definitely fast and slow ways, right? Screenwriting Fast Track, that's a faster way. That will help you move a little faster along the journey, but it's not going to be overnight. You're going to have to take the time. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to write and write and write, and you will eventually get there. But think about it as investing the time, not just, ooh, I'm going to bang this thing out and then sell it. It doesn't work that way. Slow down, invest your time, think about screenwriting that way. It's a little more healthy and will help you stay a little more balanced in your life. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has, please be sure to like, subscribe, bell, all of those things. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for watching. And when you go to tell a story, don't listen to all the bad advice. Just tell a good story. Tell a story that matters. See you later.